Hi everyone and welcome to another piano review here on Merriam Pianos on YouTube. My name is Stu Harrison. Today we're finally in front of the Roland FP90X. We've been waiting months for this one. Well, we've actually been waiting months just to even be back in the studio. We've been shut down because of COVID. So great to be back here, and how appropriate that our first instrument is the one we've been waiting the longest for. We are going to be talking about its tone, its features, its action, all the things we normally cover when we're talking about a digital piano, and of course, sharing with you my musical impressions. If it's the first time that you have joined us here on YouTube, we would really love if you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because our ever-growing community of people around the world are awesome. They're always sharing insights, tips, new perspectives on pianos. I love reading those comments. I love responding to as many as possible. So we would love for you to not just watch the video, but become part of that community. So without further ado, let's get started with the Roland FP90X right away. Well, we are back in person in studio, and boy does it feel good. And in a lot of ways, it's appropriate that the first instrument that I'm in front of is a Roland FP90X. Why? Well, because we've been waiting as long for this instrument as we've been waiting to get back into the studio. So I kind of think they're well matched, they're well paired. I don't know why sometimes it takes so long for us to get instruments, but nonetheless, we are happy to have our very first Roland FP90X in front of us. And I've been enjoying playing this instrument for the last hour, and there's lots and lots to like. And so, as we said in the intro, we're going to be going through its action, we're going to be talking about its sound, and giving you our general musical impressions of who this might be appropriate for and what we loved about it. The 90X is the follow-up to the FP90, and the Roland FP90 was a very full-featured, very capable, portable digital piano. It was kind of a multi-function instrument. It had great onboard speakers. It had three-way EQ sliders on it. It had their PHA50 action, which is kind of a wood core action, sort of Roland's version of the NWX action that Yamaha puts on their P515. I personally think the Roland is a little better weighted, but lots of people love the Yamaha as well. And it also had full piano modeling. It was the very first portable Roland digital piano, I believe, in their offerings history to offer modeling in a portable format. That was followed alongside with the RD2000, which also had modeling in it. And so here we are at the 90X, the update. So what have they updated? That's the first thing that I'd really like to cover. They've updated the processor chip. So this has the BMC chip. That is a faster chip, and what that has allowed them to do is increase the complexity of the algorithm. Because this is modeling, for those of you who are new to this whole industry, there's really two ways in which digital pianos produce sound for you. One of them is by recording a real piano and then reproducing that sound when asked, when you press a key. But the other way is modeling, in which a computer algorithm generates that sound in real time based on a number of parameters, a number of factors. And this one has modeling. There are pros and cons. Well, I don't know if there's cons to both, but there's proponents for both. There's arguments that go both ways in terms of which methodology creates the most authentic sound. But there's certainly lots to love about modeling. One of the things that there is to love about modeling is that you get unlimited polyphony. Because there's really no data, or the level of data being handled by the motherboard when you're talking about this is very, very low. It's really more of a function of whether you've got a fast enough processor. And with the BMC chip, not only is it fast enough, but it's fast enough to really start to get a pretty complex engine in there. Not quite as complex as, say, something that you get in the VST Piano Tech, which is able to leverage, quad-core, 3 gigahertz, processors in a modern PC. But it does come a long way from where the first generation. So this modeling is the same as what you'd get in Roland's current LX. I believe they call it the pure acoustic modeling, something like that. So that's one of the updates, is you have this new chip and a slightly more robust, more complex, more colorful piano tone that this is generating. And this machine really is centered around its piano production. There are many, many voices on here. In fact, well in excess of 300 voices if you add in the General MIDI 2 content. But there's lots of things that point towards the fact that they really see this as a portable piano alternative. One of the other improvements or other introductions that the 90X brings that the 90 didn't have is the MyStage. And so working in concert with the BMC chip, the MyStage really is a series of presets that manipulates who knows how many factors within that algorithm to produce these different scenarios, these different playing scenarios. And so when you hit MyStage, which is only available in acoustic piano, you get all of these different kind of described settings and the piano sound to match. So here is the BMC chip improved and more detailed sound engine using the MyStage. Let's listen to a few more of these. So here's At Hall Stage. Lakeside Studio. impressionists. So really changing the character of the sound. And then this is my favorite, which is church concert. You know, one of the things that I really underestimated, because I knew that I was going to be hearing a better lower dynamic range, because that's something that right across the whole refresh of the Roland line throughout late 2020, early 2021, I was noticing it on all the models. There was better lower dynamic performance on the FP30X. We were hearing it on the FP60X. We're noticing it on the latest LX models as well, and even the HP. So I knew it was coming, but I didn't anticipate how just satisfying and musical it would be to hear it on the 90X with this type of speaker support. Because finally, out of a portable Roland, I'm starting to get the same type of dynamic range that I've always really liked out of the portable Kawais. Like, there's times where I was just playing over the last few minutes where I thought to myself, that's a little too soft. I'm either not going to get a response at all, or it's going to be a little bit spiky, almost, you know, like when you hit that kind of sample stepping that we're all used to playing digital pianos, quietly exposed piano. to walk through the whole range on piano. We are going to get to some other sounds, but like I said, since to me this is so focused towards acoustic piano, I want to spend a little bit more time on it with regards to that setting, you know. So firstly, we're taking audio outs, quarter-inch line outs, as well as 2 stereo microphones that are, I don't know, maybe 3 feet over top of the instrument. And we've got 4 speakers coming out of this instrument, 2 25-watt speakers and 2 5-watt tweeters. And one of the things that Roland has also changed on the 90X is we've got these 2 sort of sound ports or tone ports out the very back of the instrument. And this, to me, is quite critical because it disperses the treble a little more than what you were getting on the 90. The 90, sometimes the treble was a little bit harsh or could be harsh. Now you're pushing it out into the rest of the room and you're getting a slightly less direct treble. I love that, really like that a lot. The other thing that it does is treble is always what's going to cut a little bit more when you're dealing with a noisier room. And so if you were going to be using a 90X for, say, a rehearsal, as a rehearsal piano, or if you were gigging with this, I think there's a lot of scenarios where you could get away without additional sound reinforcement, at least for a stage. I'm always chronically lugging around big heavy amplifiers with me. I mean, I've got a stage piano that doesn't have any onboard speakers, but that's because I could never find a stage piano that I thought had good enough speakers where I could get away with not having an amp. So rationale being, if I'm always going to need an amp anyway, then it's not that critical decision on the keyboard. This, I think, for not every scenario, but I think for a number of scenarios, would negate the need for an amp. I really do. So we're playing this, the volume I guess is about 3/4, and even at full, these speakers don't break up, they don't distort one little bit. And I was trying it on, and we will hear this in a second as well, I was trying it on Rhodes because that's, you know, if you're playing in R&B band or wedding band or anything like that, and you're going to be using something like this, you find yourself playing Rhodes a lot because it's a nice blended sound. You could play pads a lot with a Rhodes. You've still got the percussive quality of the Rhodes, so it's almost acts as a bit of a guitar-esque type of a texture in a band sound. So it's really good to try Rhodes and understand how that behaves with the speakers, and they're great. So in the bass, you feel some resonance, which is nice. There's no woofiness. And even if I push this a little bit, handles the extra output no problem. You can see Lee back there freaking out that I've just adjusted the volume. Don't worry, I have moved it back to where it was. The mid has a really beautiful a cabinet resonance to it, which I'm not used to getting with Roland. And one of the things that they've updated with the new processor and the new algorithm is the ability to change the soundboard type, which is really kind of a combination of soundboard cabinet resonance type. Like, it's the scale design of the instrument, what they're kind of giving you the option of doing. And it dramatically affects the character of the tone. And I find that the midsection of any digital piano is where, well, or acoustic piano, is often where you feel and experience the greatest changes or the greatest results from manipulation of those scale designs, or what Roland calls soundboard type. I'll see if I can sort of quickly find that setting. That'll be in Piano Designer. And here we go, lid, key off noise, soundboard type. Here we go, so soundboard type 1, soundboard type 2. So there's 5 different types in there, and you can really tell right here because it affects the mid-tones the most. Anyway, going up, this is the one area of the piano that I would tweak right out of the box, because when you get up into this, the top 2 octaves, in particular the top octave, the attack is so strong on those notes that it's too much. So I'd be going into the equalizer, I'd be tweaking what the frequency was on my top equalizer, because this feels like kind of a, I don't know, something like a 7 or 8K that needs to just back off. It's like a really high level of that brassy range. But man, oh man, is it clear, and it certainly gets away from what was sometimes a glassy treble in other previous Roland models. There's none of that. So besides piano, you've got your normal Roland electric piano, I don't know, complement. This 76 suitcase, which we know and love. The whirlies, all those early synth sounds, the DXE sounds, and then your organs, your strings and pads, your synths, etc. Really not much has changed here. Some of the sounds feel a little more thick than on the previous version, but fundamentally the library of tones is about the same as what you'd expect. You have the option to split the keyboard into dual mode or split mode. There's 2 piano mode as well, so that's where like you have 2 identical ranges on the bottom or top if you're playing duets or teacher mode or something like that. You've got your volume sliders for your parts, and we already mentioned the equalizer. There is a recorder on this as well. You have the ability to record standard MIDI files as well as WAV. You can't record MP3. But the wave is there if you want to be able to make direct recordings that way. And if you are using the Piano Everyday app with the FP90, then you also get the auto accompaniment. There's no auto accompaniment directly accessible from on board without the use of the app. You know, I don't have too many beasts with this instrument, but that would be another one where I thought, it'd be kind of nice to be able to not bring the app out and still get that auto accompaniment, but nonetheless, the app is really stable. It's very easy to use. They've improved and simplified how to pair this. So you sit down, you press the pairing, you're connected in seconds. There's no menus to dig through. It's really easy. So, I mean, it's not a big deal, and more people are getting used to having those paired devices, but you can't do it from the main user interface. You need the app. That is about all we're going to mention when it comes to sound on this instrument. So we're going to be back in just a quick moment, and we're going to talk about the action. It's the PHA-50 action. And thank you so much for being with us. See you in a second. The action on the FP90X is the PHA-50. This is the only member of the FP series that uses the PHA-50, and the PHA-50 action is kind of a wood hybrid action that they also use on a number of other higher level home digital pianos at Roland. And the PHA-50 is an action I know well, but I also really like it for a couple of reasons. One, it's indestructible. They've made a few engineering tweaks to the PHA-50 that take it above and beyond what the PHA-4 can handle, and the type of feeling and responsiveness that it gives you. For one, the key stick is much longer than in the PHA-4. So the PHA-50, the pivot point to the front of the key is getting very close to a grand. It's not quite there. There is another action in which it's basically just the PHA-50 with an even longer key stick, but this is pretty darn close to what you're going to get in like an upright piano in terms of the geometry involved with the length of the key stick. But there's also this stabilizer pin in the back of every PHA-50 key, and I can't tell you how critical this little engineering tweak is to the long-term durability of these keys if you are playing this at a professional level at a really high frequency. Particularly, I would say, if you use this more for contemporary playing, where you're likely to be putting more lateral pressure or lateral tension on the key than if you were playing something more classical. So, I mean, the most crude example of how this takes place would be like glissandos. So if you're a blues player and you're doing like a lot of this kind of stuff, up and down, or even doing organ stuff with a fully weighted key, where you may doing a lot of glisses up to chords, that kind of thing, you're putting quite a bit of tension on the very back joint of that key. Also, if you're doing a lot of pretty aggressive octave playing, you're not exactly over top of the key, so you're always sort of jabbing it from a slight angle, and you're putting a lot of pressure on that key. So that stabilizer pin on the back is going to save your key, and it's going to get way more life out of that back joint before the key starts to loosen up, and ultimately, in a lot of cases, for the highest level players, sometimes key breakages. I know like the Yamaha GHS was known for this amongst players who really pushed that action, and there was kind of a weak point in the joint. I was one of them. I busted, I don't know, half a dozen keys on a couple of different GHS actions, in playing scenarios like that. So this pin on the back really saves that. It's one of the biggest differences in why I often recommend the PHA-50 over the PHA-4 for people who are going to be in really intensive professional use cases, especially playing contemporary music. You've got a textured white key top as well as the black key top, and it's got a triple sensor in there. I really like using the PHA-50 as a triggering, as a controller as well. I just finished a whole slew of VST reviews and explorations. I had so much fun doing that. So for those of you who kind of enjoyed that detour away from the normal piano stuff, thank you so much for joining me along that little journey. But we were using a PHA-50 to trigger with the RD2000, trigger all of those VSTs. The repetition speed on the PHA-50 is really very good. But I will say that if you're used to the PHA-4 or earlier versions of Roland Actions, the PHA-50 doesn't really feel like some of the Roland Actions of old. It's kind of a more cushioned action than you might be used to. There's a bit of a sense that the key dip is slightly shallower. And you know, all of these impressions that you're getting is really the result of that longer key stick that until the PHA-50, they really hadn't put in any of the instruments. So my only word of caution is if you already have an established love of some of the older Roland Actions, you may want to try and play this before you just order it. If you don't really care that much and all you're interested in is an action that replicates and simulates the proper geometry of an acoustic piano, well, I think there's a really good chance you're probably going to be quite happy with this. The weighting of it is nearly identical to that of an acoustic, and I think you're going to like it. So that's a quick note on the action. We're going to take one more quick break, and we're going to be back with a discussion about accessories, connectivity, all that sort of stuff. So thanks again for sticking with us. We'll see you in just a second. All right, so what does this have in terms of connectivity and accessories, and what can it do other than all the musical stuff we've already talked about? I made mention of the Bluetooth pairing in the context of like a data connection or a MIDI connection. So it does have Bluetooth MIDI. It also has Bluetooth audio. I harp on this all the time. That does not mean it can broadcast Bluetooth audio. It does not, but it can receive Bluetooth audio. So if you wanted to use this pretty capable stereo that's built in here as a Bluetooth speaker, you can do that. Whether that is for background music, if this is, you know, stuck in your bedroom or a dorm room or a small apartment, it's beefy enough that you could actually use this in place of a pretty high-end Bluetooth speaker. So there's that. The other thing is it's pretty engaging to put some music on that you're learning and play along with it through the same speakers. There's some kind of, you know, psychological effect that makes this more engaging when both you and the sound source are coming from the same place. It just makes it feel more connected, and it's a little hard to explain, but anybody who's done it, I'm sure, will agree that it's way different than just having the music on some other stereo, even if it's in the same room. It just feels a little more visceral somehow. So we've got the two Bluetooth technologies that are included in here. It has 1/4 inch independent outs. That's really important for anybody who's going to be gigging with this. You know, if you show up to a gig and your sound person looks at a 3.5 mil stereo jack and they kind of just smirk and start fishing for these, you know, dinky little adapters. Ideally, you don't want to have to deal with that. In a pinch, sure, sometimes we have to deal with that. But we've got the 1/4 inch adapters. So anybody who wants to use those to get audio out, that's great. For people recording, you've got two options because you can use the audio jacks, or this also has a built-in USB audio interface, which means you're getting direct digital audio straight from here with no AD conversion before it hits your computer. So the only AD conversion that's ever going to happen here is when it finally you know, outputs to a digital file, and then whenever it's the stereo device finally converts it. So it's just, I guess there's the potential for it to be a slightly cleaner, more high fidelity transfer of audio. In practice, you need a really crazy, insanely expensive you know, audio chain to really detect that difference. So, I mean, let's be honest, it's not going to have a practical effect on that many people, but the potential is there for an effect. So we've got the USB audio interface, we've got the 1/4 inch outs. This also comes with a matching permanent stand if you want it, as well as a floating triple pedal system, meaning like it moves around. I don't even know if that's the official term. I just always call it floating triple pedal. But you've also got a fixed pedal board, so it looks a little more like a piano. It doesn't move around. It's attached to the stand. And it comes in black. It comes in white. You will need to order a bench with it because Roland does not ship the FP90 with a bench, but they make a couple of, like, surprisingly good benches. I mean, you know, Amazon is littered with a lot of really inexpensive benches. And I mean, all of the benches these days come from China, except if you're buying like a $1,500 Jensen bench. But the Roland benches are shockingly good. Like, they're in line with the same kind of acoustic benches that you would get from a Kawai or a Yamaha acoustic piano. So, FYI, in case you're looking for a bench. It comes with both a 1/4 inch and a 3.5 mil headphone jack, which is also handy if you've got, I mean, most headphones at this point are the 3.5 mil. Very few of them only come with the 1/4 inch. Some of them do. So you don't have to keep an adapter around anymore, which is also pretty handy. This has a microphone input. It's a 1/4 inch microphone input, and you've got both gain control on the back as well as volume control right here. And it's got USB ports both to connect to the computer if for whatever reason your device just doesn't have the Bluetooth capability on the other end. And then it's got the Type A if you want to have your USB key to play back audio, record audio, or play back or record MIDI files. So that's the FP90X. All in all, some subtle but meaningful upgrades to where the FP90 was. Roland is not asking really for a different price point for this upgrade, so these are kind of just freebies. But the ones that I really thought were quite meaningful were the tone ports on the back, because I think, and the improvements in the speaker, because I definitely hear an improvement in the speaker and the tone ports. I think for me, this brings it completely into the realm of high quality sound at a gig or rehearsal situation without the need for sound reinforcement. So that could be a big deal for some people out there. I also really like the MyStage because it gives you a quick way to flip through a number of presets that are really very satisfying, so you can take advantage of that modeling engine a little more than having to individually go and tinker with all of those settings. So I also appreciate that update. Besides that, you've just got the normal robust Roland build in front of you. And if you really like Roland, I think you're going to be quite happy with the FP90X. If you're not familiar with Roland and looking for from another brand or just generally researching this kind of category, it's right at the top of the price point. I mean, it is the most expensive out of the flagship portables with onboard speakers from Yamaha, Roland, or Kawai. But I think there's arguments to say that it is worth the cash. So our very next comparison is actually going to be getting the 90X finally side by side with Kawai's ES920, and we'll see how it stacks up there. Thank you so much for joining me and the rest of the Merriam Pianos team here on YouTube. We are back. It's mid-2021 and very excited to be sharing more and more piano videos with you in the coming weeks and months. If you have not had a chance to subscribe and you really enjoyed or found helpful what you saw here on the channel, we'd also love for you to subscribe and become part of our community. Comment, let us know what you thought of the video. We try and respond to as many of those as we possibly can, and we hope you have a great day. We'll see you again soon.